Hello and welcome to CoveaPod. My name's Lisa Brindle, Head of Learning at Covea, and I'm delighted to be your host today. So in this episode, we're going to be talking about managing performance. So we'll be raising your awareness of the fantastic services that are available from DAS, including the DAS helpline, but also we will be sharing the collective knowledge and expertise from our fabulous panel that we have with us today. So joining me today, we have our very own Covea's Joanne King, Head of HR Partnering and Culture at Covea. And to give us a wider external view, we also have Simon Roberts and Kath Kidd from DAS Law. So I'm going to pass over to you first, Joe. Can you share with the audience a little bit about yourself?
Yes, I can. So yeah, my name's Joanne King. I'm Head of Business Partnering and Culture at Career Insurance, and have been for the last few years. So my team support managers and people across the business in handling some of the employment law issues, and we work with the business areas to proactively support them.
Thank you. Simon, can I come to you next? And it'd be great if you can tell us a little bit about yourself, but also introduce what DAS Law is all about.
Yes, sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Simon Roberts. I'm a solicitor at DAS Law, and DAS Law is part of a wider group, DAS Group, which is part of the ERA Group. And our commercial customers have taken out a DAS legal expenses policy, and that gives you a lot of protection in the unforeseen event that you are involved in a legal dispute. For example, one of your employees brings a claim against you. So lots of layers to this policy. So the first major benefit when you take out your policy is the 24/7 access to our legal helpline, and that's the area that I work in. So I manage a team of lawyers that can be there on hand to help you through any legal matter, and in particular employment matters. That's our biggest area of law, and we would like I think the real benefit, is that employers can come to us at any stage that they're unsure about their situation, and we can guide them through it. And in the event that a claim arises, then that's when the added benefit of the legal protection comes in. You can claim on your insurance, and that covers the cost of appointing a lawyer to represent you.
Thank you, Simon. And last but not least, Kath, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, thanks, Lisa. So hi, everybody. My name's Kath Kidd. I'm a solicitor in DAS Law, specifically in the employment team. And Simon's just spoken about in the event that you end up with an employment claim being issued against you, it would be the team that I sit in that then deals with that claim. I've been doing this role now for over 20 years, so I have lots of experience in dealing with employment litigation.
Thank you. So, this podcast is all about managing performance. And to kickstart the conversation, I'd like to come to Joe first. And Joe, can you tell us what do you think are the key causes to poor performance?
So yeah, underperformance can be caused by a number of reasons, and one of them being right at the very start of the employee's journey with us, where a poor recruitment decision has been made. So it's really important when you're recruiting somebody that the managers are really clear as to the skills and capabilities that are needed to carry out that role effectively. And that's also what the probationary period is for as well. So it's using the probationary period in the right way to make sure that that period is used to make sure that somebody is capable of performing that role. There might also be an underlying health condition which might lead to poor performance. And another thing we sometimes see is lack of engagement or lack of motivation might be driving somebody's poor performance as well, or also just lack of clarity around what's expected of them.
Thank you. Kath, I'd like to come to you now. If you can explain sort of, wider than Conveyor, are these some of the similar things that you see?
Yes, they are. So I think from the outset, it's really important to ensure that the employee has their job description. You'd be surprised at how many people are recruited without a job description. And that's one of the key places you go to look at actually what are your objectives of your role, and having clear objectives from the outset. As Joanne has said, it's really important, the probationary period, to ensure that you use that to assess the person's skills, experience, and how they're performing. Joe referred to poor recruitment decisions. It's really hard to assess somebody in a recruitment exercise. I've held them myself, and we've recruited people and then we've gone, they're not right for the role. So that probationary period is vitally, vitally important. But as Joe said, there can be other reasons for performance issues. So health, where your health might be impacted. Menopause is a massive thing at the moment. There's lots and lots of materials in talking about the menopause that women go through. And actually that can lead to poor performance issues if they're suffering from, sleepless nights, anxiety, having hot flushes. That can really impact somebody's performance. So it would then be about supporting them in relation to their health and what's going on at the time, in addition to addressing the performance. Joe also talked about what I call won't do, can't do situation. So sometimes you may find that somebody isn't performing and they've been like one of your top performers for years, and all of a sudden they just stop. Lack of motivation, or actually they just can't be bothered anymore. In that situation, it's what I call a won't do rather than a can't do. And if it's a won't do, what you can then do is use a different policy to address that, because that then is a conduct issue rather than a performance issue. So so what Joe has covered off is the typical things you see for poor performance. It's about getting to the underlying issue.
Simon, are there any additional causes that you've noticed over the years?
I think we've covered that off. I just wanted to point out that all of our customers have access to our DAS Business Law website. Now, one of the main benefits to this site is that you can build your own performance management policies. It's for you to input what's important to you as a business and your measures of success for a new starter. So if you haven't already gone there, it's www.dasbusinesslaw.com, and if you come to us on the helpline, we can give you all the access codes that you need to get onto there, register, and start your journey of building your own documents, not only in performance management, but in all aspects of employment law, like conduct, contracts of employment, and so on. So they're all there to be utilised.
Thank you. That the helpline sounds amazing, and the services that are available. Joe, can I come to you now with the question about, from them, we will have some managers listening to this call today. So as a manager, what can managers do?
Yeah, so at Coveia we have a performance management process, and it's something that we've evolved quite a lot over recent years. I'd say the first thing is it's really important that a manager sets an individual up for success. So it's about setting really, really clear goals at the beginning so that people are clear and understand what it is that they need to do to perform. And then we need to make sure that people have got the right skills and training. So if we're asking somebody to do something that they've not done before, making sure that we're providing the support needed to help them to achieve what they need to do. We also ask managers to meet really regularly with individuals and give them regular feedback. And that feedback needs to be really balanced. So it's about celebrating what's working really well, but then also using that opportunity to talk about things that might be going slightly off track, and try and help the individual to identify what they need to do to get things right again. And the other thing is to make sure that if there are concerns about performance, that the conversations about that are happening at the earliest opportunity, and we don't leave it too late. What you don't want is an employee believing or thinking that they're doing a really good job, to be surprised later on down the line if they get that feedback too late.
Absolutely. So lots around setting those expectations, the support, the regular contact. Kath, what else would you add to this one? What are the other top tips you would be sharing with managers?
So I think what managers need to realise with performance is the whole point of the process or the policy is to help the employee succeed and improve. It's not what we would call a punitive policy. So, like a disciplinary policy, when somebody has misbehaved in a way, it's more of a punitive policy where you go through and then you issue warnings, where this is all about helping the employee succeed. So, as Joe has said, smart objectives, making sure they're clear, have discussions with the employee about those objectives, let them feed back into it. And then ensuring as you work through that process that you are doing everything you can to help them. So if that means retraining. If that means having a mentor, having a mentor. If it means more regular one-to-ones, have more regular one-to-ones.
Thank you. Simon, there's already lots of top tips, ideas, suggestions there. Is there anything else to add to that list?
I think, especially for larger organisations, I think the key is being consistent with your decisions. So, yeah, great, have smart objectives, clear descriptions of what you expect of your employees, but we need to be consistent across the board, and making correct and appropriate decisions, so that if challenged, that if, for example, an employee feels they're being treated differently, that you've got the evidence to say, actually, no, we treat everyone the same. Here's our goals and objectives, and this is how we demonstrate that we can apply them consistent across the company.
Thank you. So we've talked about the top tips, the ideas. What about the pitfalls? And Joe, I want to come to you first for this. What are some of the common mistakes that managers make?
Yeah, so some of the challenges we see are some of the mistakes, and I've spoken about this previously. One of the first things is that where managers have not been clear at the outset about what they're expecting from somebody. Um, Another one that's quite common is that managers might avoid having a conversation with somebody if they're underperforming. And I know this can be really difficult. It can be really difficult to give that feedback, but it's really important that that's given. If we leave it too late to have those right conversations, what I sometimes see is that then causes much bigger problems. Um, so that could lead to grievances later on down the line, or sickness absence. So we really do try and encourage managers to talk to the team early if they think somebody's struggling. We try and help them to manage this really proactively. It's really important that performance conversations are proactive, and that it's got to be regular as well, and that this is documented. So that's one of the other things. If somebody's underperforming, documenting those conversations so that they can be referred back to later is really important. And what we usually do is we ask managers to try and have conversations informally first, because what we want to do is try and get somebody back on track without the need for a formal performance management process. And as a team, if we can see that that's happened, and we can see that documented discussions have happened, and that we've tried to manage something informally, then we will support a manager to start a formal performance management process where we can see that these have been happening consistently and that they've failed. But like I say, we'd always try and get somebody back on track first before we look at a formal performance management process for somebody.
Thank you, Joe. So, Kath, with that wider lens now, looking outside of Conveyor, are there any other pitfalls, tripwires that you've seen, experienced?
Yeah, so Joe made a really good point there towards the end. I'm a lawyer. I love paper. Okay, so the record everything is always the advice I give to clients. If you do end up in a tribunal situation, your memory is not as good as it was on the day that you wrote that note or you dropped the email to say, here's the conversation we've had today. This is what we've agreed upon. So absolutely making sure that when you're going through a performance process, and any process to be fair, that you are documenting and recording the outcomes through each stage. And I think, as Joe has said, the mistake that I've seen a lot of managers make is not having those informal discussions to start off with. So they will leave it and leave it and leave it, probably because it is a really difficult and uncomfortable conversation. And then all of a sudden, Joe, I've worked in HR roles, they will come to HR and go, this person needs to go now. I can't cope with it anymore. And then you have to go, well, have you had the discussions? No. Have you set this out? No. So then you have to go right back to the beginning. So it is making sure that you use the informal part of the process right at the start when you start seeing issues.
Thank you. Simon, anything else that you would add to this?
Yeah, I think the message I want to get across is that we can help you avoid these pitfalls. I think as soon as your issue arises, or if you're just contemplating taking some form of step or action against your employee, give us a ring. We can tell you what the pitfalls may be, especially as each circumstances are going to be different, and we'll manage you through them. So that's the real message. Use us. It's part of your package. We get on average 300 requests for legal advice every day. So we're a big team. We can deal with your queries and we'll manage you through them, not only over the helpline, but we'll refer you to various documents, letters that you can use to help you through that process.
Is it ever too soon to phone the helpline, Simon?
We have these conversations with our customers about, I was a bit embarrassed to ring you. I wasn't sure whether that was an issue. Well, we're not here to judge you. We're here to assist. We try not to say they're called legal problems, because some people think that's not a legal problem. They're just managing an employee. It's an issue. Issues can lead to legal problems. So please ring us as soon as that issue arises.
Thank you. So get those phone calls in. Okay, so final question then, Kath, if I can come to you, it would be great if you could share with us a few examples and perhaps share with us what might happen when things go wrong, but also summarise some of the key takeaways from this call today.
Of course. So one example I often come back to is, and Jay picked up on it right at the beginning, is making sure you use that probationary period really well. Most probationary periods are 3 to 6 months long, and that will give you sufficient time to assess in that process and that time frame whether the employee that you've recruited is the right person for this role. I had a client who I worked with for a very long time, and their managers just didn't like managing people in their probationary period. So what would happen is they would pass probation, they would let things mosey on. There were issues, but they wouldn't raise, and then they'd just tip over into the 2 year point where employees get their employment rights, and then they would come to me and go, "We've got a problem." And I would go back and go, okay, so how long have these problems existed? Oh, well, week 2, week 3, and you've missed that golden opportunity then to use that probationary period. So the issue with that is then you've got to start right at the beginning. So you start at the informal stage, you reset expectations, you give time to improve, you give support. If that doesn't happen, you go into the process. And actually what then happens is you end up having somebody employed for another 6 to sort of 9 months than you really needed to employ them for, had you just dealt with it sooner on. What happens when things go wrong? So again, if you end up dismissing somebody for poor performance, if you've not followed a fair process, so you've just terminated, you would end up facing an unfair dismissal claim. The burden is on you as an employer to prove that there was a fair reason and a fair process was followed. And if you haven't done those things, then again, what we're looking at is the employee would be awarded a basic award and a compensatory award, again up to 115,000 or 1 year's gross salary, whichever is the lower. So I think what I would summarize through this is performance. People go, well, performance, it's really easy to deal with. It's not. It can actually become quite complex, quite long-winded, and you really do need to be invested in that process. So if you're not sure what you need to be doing at each stage, as Simon has said, day one access to our 24/7 helpline. They are a fabulous bunch of lawyers that can help you through any tricky situation. And then if you do end up in a tribunal situation, but you've taken that advice, it would be my team that would then support the customers in defending that claim. So I think the biggest thing to do is get in touch with us as soon as an issue arises. Doesn't have to be a legal problem.
Thank you. So massive thanks to our fabulous panel today. Thank you to you, our audience, for listening. We really hope that you've enjoyed today's pod. If you have, please ensure that you subscribe to us on Spotify or follow us on LinkedIn, and that will make sure that you've got access to the future episodes that we have coming up, but also it's going to give you access to our older episodes, and there's some great subjects that we've talked about in the other episodes, such as rising costs in insurance and supporting the needs of neurodivergent employees and also customers. So please do take time and check those out. And finally, we'd also like to invite you to subscribe to our LinkedIn newsletter, because that will bring to you some monthly insight and horizon scanning updates from the wider insurance industry. Thank you.